Welcome to the virtual edition of Encore Learning Presents, sponsored by Encore Learning, which organizes activities and educational opportunities for, shall we say, people of a certain age, those of us that have a lot of life experience. So if you're not already a member, go to encorelearning.net. That's encorelearning.net and learn of all the opportunities for classes, clubs, and free lectures like this one. So today we have a very timely presentation on how to safely enjoy the outdoors despite mosquitoes and ticks. So you've sterilized your house, you've donned your cool personalized mask. Wait, you still have a few more precautions to take before you venture outside. And we have Kasha Helget of the Arlington Regional Master Naturalist. Kasha has developed this presentation in collaboration with the Virginia Cooperative Extension and Master Gardeners of Northern Virginia. In addition to Kasha's expertise, others have that have contributed include the staff of the Department of Entomology of Virginia Tech and Kristen Conrad, the Cooperative Extension Agent for Arlington County. So if we could all welcome Kasha with a round of virtual applause. Thank you. It's all yours, Kasha.
Going through the names, I recognize a lot of folks, so thank you very much for attending this virtual presentation. We've got folks from Virginia, the District of Columbia. I think we have some folks from Maryland and maybe even Delaware. And the ticks and mosquitoes that we're going to talk about, I'm going to talk about in this presentation, most of them are covered in all those areas. So what I'm saying about Virginia should apply to all the other places. Before I start talking about mosquitoes, which I'm going to talk about first, I want to remind everybody that Wednesday is Earth Day. And it is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And even though a lot of the activities, actually pretty much everything has been canceled, there is something really special that you can still do to celebrate it. The City Nature Challenge is an activity that's been going on for a number of years, and normally it's a competition between cities and the community surrounding them all over the world to see who can identify and input into iNaturalist, which is an app, iNaturalist, that's all you type in. And the community that gets the most folks or the most identifications of animals, plants, or other living things in the areas where they are wins. But this year, because it's not a competition, and it's basically a celebration that at least our local group, it's the DC, a city group, and this includes suburban Virginia and Maryland, it's calling it City Nature Month. So for people who don't already know about it, for the remainder of the month, you can identify all these living things in your yards, along your walks, on balconies, patios, and even out the window, any kind of living thing. And you can input this information into the iNaturalist app. All the details are at, and you can write this down, www, all one word, citynaturechallengedc.org. So it's something you can do with your families or by yourself, and it's going to be a really beneficial activity. Okay, while this is usually a very interactive event, obviously I can't work with you all and see your reactions and get your questions right away, but please put your questions in the chat box. And if I don't cover them during the talk, hopefully we can get to some or most of the questions when there are breaks to talk about them. And So, you know, do that as you go along, and we're going to sort through them. And if they haven't been covered, try to cover them then. The talk will be about an hour and a half. And I encourage you all, please, to stay to the end, because the mosquito and tick portions are very different. And there's very different information and very important information in both sections that I want to pass on, that we've collected from our experts, and that we hope you don't already know and can find very useful. So hang on to your hats, and here we go. Okay, the first thing in this big screen, you'll see Virginia Cooperative Extension materials. Again, it's not just Virginia, it covers a greater area, but they're a very important part of this whole production, and I just helped with putting some of the materials together. I want to tell you also about the two groups that are mostly involved. The Master Gardeners of Northern Virginia. You see the web link right there. They have a number of classes online, just like Encore does, on a variety of subjects. This is also a group that I'm going to mention at the very end, because they are going to be a contact for you about mosquitoes and ticks, even during COVID-19. So you can see they do plant desk, help desk, plant clinics, classes, demos, and they also present at the Arlington Library, as does Encore. My group is the Arlington Regional Master Naturalists, and we are more hands-on in nature than the Master Gardeners are. We're trained and certified volunteer educators. We do a lot of citizen science projects, like the City Nature Challenge, and a great deal of stewardship for the environment, especially removing a lot of invasives. So we are really connected with all nature locally, and that's primarily in Arlington, Alexandria Falls Church, and a little bit of Northern Fairfax County. There are groups all around the state. Okay, mosquitoes. A lot of people can be very afraid of them. But what we're trying to do here is dispel some of that fear, understand the risks and benefits of mosquito control, because there are ways you can control it safely, and there are very dangerous ways to control them. And I really want to stress the importance of protecting our native pollinators and beneficial insects. And this can be a real problem with sprays that you may want to put out in the environment. They're very lethal to these animals. You also have to respect that mosquitoes are important. They provide food for a lot of critters in nature, and we don't want to get rid of all of them. Not that we could, because I'm about to tell you how fast they reproduce. Learning the nature, dangers of indiscriminate use of non-selective pesticides, very important. Avoid the false sense of security when you use those pesticides. And I tell you a lot about personal protection tactics so you can enjoy the outdoors. Over 3,000 species. I'm not going to cover that here, nor am I going to cover the 40 in Virginia. What we're going to talk about are 3 mosquito types, and you can see them at the bottom of the screen here. The Culex, 2 different kinds of Culex, and 2 different kinds of Aedes. I mean, obviously there are 2 different kinds of Culex in the area, but the 2 different kinds of Aedes mosquito are what we're going to talk about. When I say they're largely aquatic, it means that most stages of their life are underwater. And this is really important to know, because this is a great way to control them before they become adults, when they emerge from the water. Only adult females bite. Humans and other mammals mostly. They're cold-blooded, so you're probably not experiencing them now. I already got a couple of mosquito bites on the warmer days, but they tend to, to lay back until it's generally in the 70s. That's when they really like it. They don't live very long, but they can be very active in that time. 2 to 3 months. Females live longer than the males do, and they can stay very busy. Okay, our Culex mosquito. They're the small brown little guys that we're the most familiar with through our lives. They bite at dawn and dusk. And while they prefer some other animals, obviously we get in their way and get bitten too. The range is 1/2 to 2 miles, and this is something that's important to know for controlling them in your neighborhoods. When I say they're not as aggressive as other mosquitoes, the Aedes type, it means that they can land on you and you may not know they're biting you. If an Aedes mosquito is biting you, you know it. They are very aggressive and they're not easily swished away. It's another good reason to wear insect repellent. Culex mosquitoes, as a matter of fact, all mosquitoes lay eggs in stagnant water. And when I say stagnant, I mean still. The Culex prefer more polluted water, but they'll breed anywhere. So storm drains, rain gutters in your yard, sites with standing water, and I'm going to show you some of that as we go along. These are the mosquitoes that can spread West Nile virus. The first Aedes mosquito I'm going to talk to you about is the Adulticide, and it's the biggest pest because it's the hardest biter. And you can see it can transmit a lot of diseases. Again, I'm going to say this again and again and again in the course of the talk. When I say they can, it doesn't mean they do. We want to warn you about the diseases that you might get, but you can be bitten and not have anything transmitted to you. Anyway, these are the daytime biters. These are the ones that come out and you're like, what am I being bitten by a mosquito for? It's going to be a little bit bigger, not as big as on the screen, thank God, but it's also a much more aggressive one. They like clean water. Small and large containers, and I'm going to show you a lot of examples, but they'll also breed in tree holes, in rock pools. They can travel up to 600 yards. Again, keep this in mind for if you're trying to control an area outside of your own yard. The other Aedes, think of it as a cousin of the Albopictus, the Aedes aegypti, a little bit larger, as aggressive as the other Aedes mosquito, and it carries a lot of possible pathogens as well. Okay, here's something, a little talk about how mosquitoes come to be. In the springtime, they can emerge from hibernation. They can also emerge as eggs that have been frozen over the winter, and they can begin their life cycle that way if the female deposited the eggs before winter. But if they haven't bred, the males and the females get together and they lay the eggs in the still water, whether it's, even though we're talking about a Culex mosquito here, it's both Aedes and Culex mosquitoes that will lay in still water. And that's when the action starts really fast. Eggs hatch within 2 to 3 days. They go through 4 larval stages, 1 pupal stage within 7 days. So 7 to 10 days, they go from eggs to adults, very fast. And I want you to look at the pictures on the right side of the screen. The one in the middle, the larva, that's the way they can look in the water, hanging upside down. But they also move like little jumping commas, really kind of jerky jumping commas in the water. That's the larval stage. This is also an important thing to remember as I talk about how to control them a little bit later on. The bottom picture on the right side is the pupal stage. They tend to move more slowly and they tend to drop a little bit deeper in the water. You can't control them at that stage, except for maybe a screen over the water. And I'll tell you how you can control them earlier on, and it really works well. Okay, so 7 to 10 days later, you got the mosquito that comes out of the water, full-blown adult, and it's ready to start things all over again, breed and continue its life cycle until the winter. The female can lay up to 300 eggs at a time. So they are very effective breeders. and as we know, can be very big pests throughout the year, the warmer months. I mentioned that there were different places where they can breed. This tends to be more the Culex mosquito. You can look at the various pictures of where they will appear or breed. These things are really hard for us to control, especially when they're out in nature there, but these are places where mosquitoes breed. Temporary bodies of water, the kind that after a big rain, they stick around for 7 to 10 days. That's a great spot to lay some eggs. Pressure polluted, natural or man-made, and the important one on the bottom is that they're lacking predators. Not to say that mosquitoes won't lay eggs where predators might be. You might have still water with predators in them, and I will tell you more about them. They will lay their eggs anywhere, and it's just in these other places where they have enough time to become adults. Okay, this is the stuff that I really want you to focus on. The common backyard mosquito sources. And look at the various pictures. Obviously, tree holes, that might be a difficult thing to control water. You probably don't have tires. But leaky hoses, ponds can be good or not so good. Toys, neglected pools, if you've got a pool in your yard. Fountains, uncovered boats, open trash bins can be a real problem. You should have a tight fitting lid over your trash can and not keep the lid upside down. If you have water in your trash can, dump it out, get a tight fitting lid. You can get that from your county or city. They'll provide it and make sure you've got good covered trash cans. Clogged rain gutters, that's a great place for water to pool up. Another reason to clean out your gutters, low areas in your yard where water may sit for a few days. Water bowls for pests. And I want to show you, my full screen? I hope to be full screen here because I want to show you a couple other things that that you may need. I've got a pot with a saucer here. This should never be outside because water can pool in here and it'll stay there and mosquitoes can breed in that. And outside you shouldn't have saucers anyway. Plants want to be free flowing, so don't have these saucers under a pot. Another thing, these are pot circles that you can put on your deck or your patio. And if you notice there, where these holes are, they were all filled in. And I drilled them out so the water would flow through them because mosquitoes can lay eggs in something as small as this. And my favorite thing to show everybody is your basic bottle cap. It's 300 eggs. 300 eggs can breed or can be produced in that bottle cap. So that's something you definitely don't want to have. Okay, I'm going to go back to full screen here. Okay, so these are things to be aware of. Now, fountains and bird baths. You say, wait a minute, I want a bird bath. I want to give the birds water. What am I supposed to do? The thing that you should do is remember that 7 to 10 days, a mosquito can go from egg to full-blown mosquito. Dump out that water. You're trying to, treat your birds with clean water. Give them clean water. Same thing with water pet bowls. Dump it out, refill it, keep it fresh. I like to do it like about every 4 days during the summer. And that way, it's just a regular cycle. Just remind yourself, dump it out. The birds will appreciate it very much. Think also of rain barrels. If you have a rain barrel in your yard, make sure you have a good screen over the top. There's another way to treat a rain barrel too, and the ponds, and I'm going to tell you about that in a little bit. But have a good screen so if the mosquitoes do lay eggs in there, they're not going to get out as adults. Here's some more examples. Again, the rain gutter, the pot with the, the holder underneath, obviously a kiddie pool and the bird bath. But I want to talk about the one in the center, the corrugated pipe. You're going, well, what am I supposed to do with that? Well, do you see how it's tilted a little bit? Water can pool in the lowest part of that pipe. So what are you supposed to do? What you should do is drill holes in that lowest part of the corrugated pipe. It's the pipe will still perform the function of shooting out most of the water away from your house, but it will dribble those last little bits into the ground so mosquitoes won't breed there. The picture right below it is of a well. You can't really see how deep it is, but I'm going to talk to you very soon about how you can deal with that. If there's water that you can't get out, you can still treat it. So mosquitoes won't breed in there. Now the one on the right is just stupid. You got to turn that thing around now. Okay, various mosquito controls. The whole, some of them we've already talked about, and some I'll talk to you coming up here. Removing sites where mosquitoes breed, obviously still water, but also where they rest. They love things like English ivy that can hold water. Another reason not to have English ivy. It's very invasive. But you can mow it, keep it low if you want to keep it. Look around your yard. Where else could mosquitoes gather? Where might they be aware of? There might be a water source you don't know about until you really examine the area. I'll talk about the biological ones later. The environmental ones, getting rid of standing water, screens. The environmental manipulation is something that is done more at a higher level than, so don't worry about that now. And there are various chemicals that I'll mention later. But the most effective controls are directed at the immature stages of the mosquito, and that is before it gets out of the water. Okay, I promised you talk about biologics. They can be a real, honest to God animal, like if you have a pond and you can get a thing called a mosquito fish. There is such a thing that does live on mosquitoes. There are also a lot of other larvae, kind of, if you build it, they will come. Dragonfly larvae, water striders and ground beetles, love that. Frogs and toads will show up in your pond. It's amazing if you have a pretty good sized pond, they will be there. And they will eat a lot of the mosquito eggs. And so that's a real help to the whole situation with mosquitoes. Okay, let's say you've got a little bitty pond, or you've got that bird bath that you want to treat, or the well that I showed you. This is one of the best products you can ever find. It is a biologic. It's from a soil, it comes through the soil. And Mosquito Dunks is the only brand name that I know of, but you can find it anywhere in the summertime. When I say anywhere, I mean like any big box store, like the Home Depot, or places like Target, and even some grocery stores carry it in the summertime. You can get the dunks that are pretty good size, and they will last for up to 30 days in a pretty good sized body of water. If you think the water might get flushed out, you can put it in a little bag, like, out of toile or some kind of netting, so it stays suspended down there and it doesn't get flushed away. If you have a smaller body of water, you can use mosquito bits. It comes in bits and granules and dunks, and if you can't find them in the store, you can easily get them online. And you can also apply it through vegetation where there might be some aquatic areas underneath. It'll bounce through. It is wonderful because it's highly selective for mosquito larvae and certain fly species. It's not going to harm your birds. It's not going to harm your fish. It's not going to harm toads and frogs and other insects. It works very well. It's been around for a while. Remember Mosquito Dunks. It's a very good product. There are other things you can do to protect yourself as well. Clothing. The clothing on the right may be not something that you're going to wear as a high fashion thing, but you definitely will be protected. You can also just wear long sleeves, long pants, socks, shoes, hats, and neck covering to protect as much of your body as possible. Obviously netting, if you can see the lower left, if you're going to be outside for rooms and beds, and skin repellents. I'm going to mention these again in relation to ticks, but the two most popular are DEET and picaridin. And these percentages, 25 to 30% for DEET and picaridin, 20%, that you're not going to see it in the higher concentrations likely in the retail market, but you don't want to wear anything stronger than that. Now, some people are sensitive to these chemicals, and they are chemicals. So there is a product, oil of eucalyptus, which is made out of eucalyptus, and it's very effective for mosquitoes. And another product called IR3545, that name has stuck, all along, but it is in some enhanced Skin So Soft products, if you remember that from Avon. But you can also get it in other applications, and there's a lot of examples at the bottom of the slide. Okay, now we're going to get to a part that I find a little bit, oh, I forgot one thing about mosquitoes. They are actually drawn more to type O blood type people. So if there are some people say, I feel like I'm a mosquito magnet, well, they kind of are. And people who are type A tend to be the least attracted to mosquitoes. But in an area where there are a lot of mosquitoes, they are attracted to you no matter what. So, but that's just a really interesting piece. Okay, adult mosquito control. We really hope that this is something that you're not going to use. The picture here is when things are really bad, when there's a mosquito outbreak of a pathogen, West Nile virus or Zika, and if it's gotten into the population of people in your area, there very well might be sprays, and then it's kind of all bets off for the rest of the pollinators. We're trying to protect people here. So the jurisdictions in this area, and as far as I know, everybody that I'm talking to here, the counties or the cities take this stuff very seriously, and they're not going to spray unless there's a real danger of getting into the mosquito population, a disease. So it's generally very limited, and it's subject to very serious surveillance. Okay, mosquito adulticides. These are things you need to know about. You need to know about these products to know if they're being sprayed in your area. Pyrethroids, the most common one you're going to see is permethrin. And it is very toxic when it's sprayed into the environment. And you can see that it's a problem, not so much for mammals and birds, but fish, arthropods, and non-target insects. These are your pollinators, bees, butterflies, moths. They're very susceptible to these chemicals. The next category is the organophosphates. These are even more lethal. They can be toxic to mammals and birds and fish, very toxic to honeybees, but also to all these other beneficial insects. And there are a couple of brand names for all these others. I want you to look at the term on the bottom, broad spectrum. If you go to a place like Home Depot, you can likely buy these products in a can. If it says broad spectrum, or it says non-selective, it means it'll kill everything, every kind of insect. And I hope you don't buy things like this because it's very toxic to the insects that we really need for pollination. Okay, now I know that none of you are going to hire a mosquito control company. Oh no. But if one of your neighbors said, hey, I understand that you listen to this mosquito talk, and I would like to hire a company, and I would like you to tell me about the company that they think is the best one to hire. Okay, first of all, you're going to go, no. And this is what you can do to keep the mosquitoes away. And you will tell them about, getting rid of water in your yard and using repellent and not going out at dawn and dusk and things like that. But if they're very insistent, they should only use a VDAX, licensed pest management company. VDAX is Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. I would guess that most of the companies that spray in this area are licensed by VDAX. And again, for people in the district, in Maryland, and Delaware, you're going to have a similar organization that's going to oversee pesticide application. And here's something that I don't know of anybody that's ever asked, but you should ask if they practice any integrated pest management, IPM. Do they have any IPM plans? And this will include things like getting rid of water in your yard, using a biologic like BTI, the mosquito dunks. Are they going to mention about any of these other things besides spraying? I've never heard of anybody who does, but this is something else to ask them. Compare proposals just like you would for any other service that you would hire, and look for a good reputation and quality. And there are very strong laws about pesticide discharge over water. So this is something that, keep in mind. If you find any violations, you can report them to VDAX. They take this very seriously if there are violations. Okay, when working with pesticide applicators, here are some things that you should be aware of. Do not apply when pollinators are active. When are pollinators active? They are active during the day. When do pesticide companies come? During the day. They're probably not going to be coming at dawn and dusk when the pollinators are the least active. But this is a problem. Obviously, not on food crops. On flowering plants that pollinators visit, all the plants around the yard that are flowering and that you see the bees and the butterflies and other insects visiting. On windy days where the application might spread around, the hottest part of the day when there might be a heat inversion, or before a rain, there's not much purpose of that. Instead, remove or cut down the plants where they might want to rest. Encourage natural predators like bees and other insects that eat mosquitoes. Plant native plants. These are the kinds of things that your local insects are really going to want to visit. You don't have to plant a lot, but plant a few. Obviously, remove the standing water or use selective biologics like mosquito dunks. And the last one on the page here, use fans. That is one of a little known technique that really, really works. I got a story for you. A couple of years ago, I was giving this talk at a library in North Arlington, and we went into this very lovely room in the back where they had presentations. And when we walked in, the room was full of mosquitoes. I kid you not. The person who led me in there was horrified. And of course, we started clapping, like trying to kill them. It's like, well, this isn't going to work. It turns out there was a door to the outside that had been left open. And that's how mosquitoes got in. So I asked her, do you have any fans? And she said, yeah. I said, could you bring me a couple? And she set them up. And we put them at kind of odd angles on opposite ends of the room, and we just kept them on. And when we got to this part of the talk, I asked the people, have you had any trouble with mosquitoes? They looked at me like, no. And no, because the fans work. Mosquitoes are weak flyers, so it's a really nice technique. And this is something you can use when your family's sitting outside, or once again, when you can have guests. They'll think you're just trying to keep them cool, and you're just keeping the mosquitoes away. It's a really nice technique. But as a last resort, again, if you're working with a pesticide company, Ask them to use only ultra low volume sprays during the cool part of the day when the pollinators are not active. Another thing I want to tell you about mosquitoes and sprays. When you spray, the water droplets go through the air, and definitely when where mosquitoes in that area and they're flying through, they're going to get nailed, as will any other insect in that area. Then the droplets settle on the vegetation, and that's where it can be very lethal to other insects who are visiting those plants. But that air part, once the mosquitoes fly through, the next batch of mosquitoes can just keep flying right along because the mosquito spray has already dropped onto the vegetation. So when you think about it, if you're trying to get mosquitoes in the air, you're not going to get all of them, but you can be killing beneficial insects that land on the vegetation. So this is something you really want to think about. Mosquitoes are also very rapid breeders, as we found out. So they can become resistant to these sprays, and it can become a very, very vicious cycle. Okay, mosquito controls that do not work. Bug zappers. Nope. Listerine, wearing dryer sheets, vapor rub, vanilla. Nope. Wristbands, ultrasonic devices, clip-on repellents. Citronella and other plants. No, they're not. They might be a little effective, but not very. And also propane-driven CO2 mosquito traps actually attract mosquitoes. They don't repel them. Bats and purple martins actually like fat moths and other insects, although they do eat some mosquitoes. And it doesn't matter what you eat. Garlic doesn't keep them away, but it might keep your friends away. Okay, the average range of an adult mosquito is between 600 feet, the Aedes mosquito, and 1 to 2 miles for the Culex. That's why you want to work with your neighbors. If you see somebody who's got water standing in their yard, tell them about mosquito dunks. If they have pots that are sitting and collecting water, remind them to tip them over because they don't want to cause mosquitoes to breed in them. It can be very helpful to your neighbors and to yourself too. The most popular spray, permethrin, is non-selective. It is broad spectrum. It's going to kill beneficial insects as well as mosquitoes. And it can remain in the environment for some time on vegetation and really cause harm to those beneficial insects. Mosquitoes don't like to breed in moving water. They like still water. This is something I didn't tell you about. If you've got a little bitty pond or a fountain, get one of those bubbler kind of things, even the solar kind. They work pretty well now. That'll keep the water moving. It's interesting, birds aren't bothered by it or other insects that will drink from the water. So use a bubbler if you can't change it every 3 or 4 days. Otherwise, mosquito dunks. And you can also put the mosquito dunks in the fountains too. It's an extra protection. And again, mosquitoes are wick flyer fans. They are very effective. Make sure your screens are good and keep screens over your rain barrels. Try to avoid being outside during dawn and dusk. Wear the clothing. If you don't want to spray yourself and or use an effective repellent like DEET, picaridin, or these other products that I told you about. And please, please always follow the label instructions when you're using any kind of chemicals. And that kind of wraps it up for the mosquito portion. I would be happy to look at any.
Yeah, Kasha, this is David. I mean, that was so comprehensive. We have a few questions. I think you've already covered some of them, but one in particular I think I can highlight, and that has to do with someone's asking about specifically the Mosquito Squad, but other companies as well. And so, they obviously, you see them with protective respiratory gear and whatnot. But what rights do homeowners, other homeowners have in terms of the drift? Obviously maybe damaging their vegetation, or just if they're outdoors themselves. Do we have the right to speak up, I guess, when one of our neighbors is using it and we're not particularly pleased about that?
Yeah, that is a real tough and sensitive problem. I actually have another story, and first of all, I hope you're on good terms with your neighbors. Tell them about these other ways to deal with mosquitoes. As far as preventing them from doing it, you really can't, other than to please ask them not to spray in the direction of your property. My neighbor, before she knew that I was a native plant gardener and a master naturalist, she hired a mosquito spray company to come. She was going to have a party and she wanted to make sure there were no mosquitoes around. She wasn't home at the time because she didn't want to be there when the mosquito spray company came. But thank God I was there, because I watched that guy spray, and he went over the far side of the yard spraying all the shrubs and things. And then he turned his spray to the plants that were facing my property. And I made it known that I was not happy. So I made him stop and I asked him, do you know that this is going to drift over into my yard? I protect pollinators. I have a lot of flowering vegetation that the pollinators visit. I have an herb garden right on the other side of this. Well, basically he stopped and he left. And then I told my neighbor about this, and she was horrified. And when I told her all the ways that she can control mosquitoes, she was so thankful. And I'll bet other neighbors will be too. Again, you want to be really sensitive. And you're probably saying, well, these guys have got to make a buck too. But they also have to follow the rules. And they shouldn't be spraying when pollinators are active on plants that they visit in your yard if you don't want it. That spray, that they should be really careful about drift and timing. They should be coming in the early part of the day or in the late part of the day. I know this is a lot of information, but if you can sensitively pass it on to your neighbors, hopefully everybody will jump on board, and it can make a real difference in mosquito populations in your neighborhood. So
Yeah, Kasha, real quick follow-up related question, and that is, some of these companies advertise a environmentally benign alternative spray. Is there such a thing?
Well, you need to ask them, what is it? What are they spraying? I don't know of anything other than, a permethrin type or organophosphate. Ask them what it is and ask them for information about it. And then look it up before you actually hire them. Do some research. There's a lot of stuff online, and there are some good organizations that examine all these kind of chemicals or treatments. I don't know if they're spraying something like oil of eucalyptus. I suppose it would be okay. I don't know if that's something that they would use, but I ask them. Always ask questions and see what they're using.
Okay, and I think we just a couple more, and then we move on. I'll give you two here, and that should suffice for mosquitoes. One very specific is oil of eucalyptus, the same as oil of lemon eucalyptus. And then the other one, if you can handle these both at the same time, tell us more about why the CO2 actually attracts mosquitoes and it's not really effective at killing them.
I don't, okay, the first one is oil of lemon eucalyptus. This is actually on the page right here. And oil of eucalyptus, it's the same kind of variant. It's basically the same kind of non-chemical spray. As far as how the CO2 machines work, I don't really know, other than that they attract mosquitoes. Some of these things, you want to try to attract them so you kill a whole bunch of them, but you don't want all those mosquitoes in your yard. I mean, if they're trying to come to the CO2 machine, they may not make it before they find you. So better not to use it. But I don't really know enough about how they work.
Okay, I think in the interest of time, we got a couple more questions, but I know Kasha has committed to any questions she can't get to presentation to do a written response that we can put somewhere on our Encore learning page. So why don't we, but keep the questions coming, and we'll see how much time we have at the end of the presentation. So Kasha, why don't you go on, and we can try to deal with the tips.
I actually thought of one more question that might come up, and that's about COVID-19. Can mosquitoes or ticks spread it? And the answer to that is pretty resoundingly no. Both the CDC and WHO have said no. These are blood-borne diseases, not from droplets in the air as COVID-19 is spread. So you're not going to get that from a mosquito or a tick. Okay, now we're going to get into ticks. I'm going to talk to you about 6 ticks in Virginia. And again, these are all 6 ticks are more or less in the entire region of people that might be listening to this. We're going, I want you to learn how to recognize them, know the diseases that they may carry, or at least have information available that you can look up later, and how to manage the exposure to ticks. They're starting to get active now, and it's most active April to September. It's really getting into October anymore because of climate change. The warm weather season is getting longer, and they're becoming active in more areas than they used to. I got here that adult deer ticks remain active in the winter, but also the longhorn tick, which will be on the next page, can be active in the winter too. So if you're thinking about working in your in the shrub in your gardens and things, you may need to check yourself for ticks even in the wintertime. Okay, I'm going to go over them really quickly and then talk about them in more detail a little bit later on. American dog tick, the deer tick, Lone Star tick, and the brown dog tick are the most common in this area. The American dog, brown dog, and Lone Star are all about the same size. The deer tick is the smallest of all the ticks I'm going to talk about, and probably one of the more prevalent ones. So, you know, oh boy. These are the 2 newcomers. The longhorn tick is in Virginia, and the Gulf Coast tick has come as well. The longhorn tick, so far as we know, it's on cattle and sheep primarily. It's been on a couple of other animals, but so far has not attached to humans, although it has in Asia. So we figure it's probably just a matter of time. The Gulf Coast tick it is not in the Gulf. It has moved up the Gulf region. It is a land-based tick as all these others, and it's been found close to our areas as well. Okay, tick ID. This is important if you want to identify a tick. You'll probably need a magnifying glass because they can be pretty small, especially at the early stages. You want to look at their size, the overall size. They run generally from 5 to 6 millimeters, which is less than 1/4 of an inch, full-size female. Again, females are the biters, not the males. Down to 2 or 3 millimeters, which is much smaller for a full-size deer or black-legged tick. Ornamentation. It's the scutum, the shield on the back, underneath the head. The mouth parts, the size and the shape can be very distinctive from tick to tick. And festoons. The festoons are the lines at the base of its body. That's also a very distinctive feature, whether it has festoons or not. You are going to need a magnifying glass to see all this stuff, a ruler to compare, to look at its overall size, and comparison pictures. I'm going to show you a couple of slides that look at the various sizes of the actual sizes of the ticks. And as it says, when they've been fed, which is when they have attached to a host and taken blood from them, they'll get bigger. but you can see how small they are. And we're talking about larvae, nymphs, and adults. All 3 stages are biters, unfortunately. When they take a meal as a larva, they will grow to be a nymph, and when they take another meal, they'll grow to be an adult. So you've got to worry about it at 3 stages. Here's another comparison to a dime, how small they are. This is the black-legged or deer tick, they go by both names, how tiny they are compared to a dime. It is, again, one of the smallest full-size ticks you're going to come across in this area. And think of them in comparison. The larva might be the size of pepper, but it's probably going to be moving pepper on your body. A nymph is a little bit larger. You might think of a poppy seed, and they might be, the adults might be as big as an apple seed. So they can be very, very small and grow up to be quite a bit larger. Okay, I'm going to talk about each of these ticks in some detail. So if you have a magnifying glass, you can probably tell what kind of tick you have. Notice on the dog tick, it's got small, stout mouth parts. It also has an ornamentation, a shield on its back of its neck. It's called a scutum. And it also has festoons. You can see the little wavy lines at the back of its body. And this particular tick also has wavy lines on the main part of its body. Another thing I forgot to mention too is, and you can see this in the smaller picture, this is going to be true of all the ticks you see. The larva has 6 legs. The nymph and adults have 8 legs. So they grow a new pair of legs when they move from larva to nymph, and they keep them in adulthood. The another thing I wanted to tell you, this tick can grow to be 5 millimeter long, so it's one of the bigger ticks. And this is also one that can carry Rocky Mountain spotted fever, so that's pretty dangerous. The Lone Star tick, you notice the difference between the mouth parts. Short, long and narrow. It also has, it doesn't have the scutum, the shield on top, but it has a white dot, and you can notice the white dot better in the other set of pictures with the larva and nymph. And this is, again, the adult female. Reddish brown. It also has the festoons around the bottom. And so this is a pretty distinctive one with that white spot in the middle of its back. The Lone Star tick can also pass on a pathogen that will make you allergic to red meat. You might have heard about that, and it's true. If you pick up a disease from the Lone Star tick, you might get this allergy, but it can also carry other diseases. The brown dog tick, and you saw the first American dog tick, small mouth parts, same thing with the brown dog tick. It doesn't have a shield of any kind, it just has wavy lines, but it does have the festoons on the bottom. All these ticks are a little bit larger, up to 5 millimeters long. So that's another thing that's kind of distinctive about them. This one can also have its entire life indoors. That's not a good thought, but it can do that. And it can also carry Rocky Mountain spotted fever. The Asian longhorn tick, this is the one that's currently on cattle and sheep, so far not on humans. You can see it has small mouth parts, no distinctive scutum, although it has kind of a line there, and the festoons, kind of nondescript brown color. This is the other one that can be active all year long. Another interesting thing, this is going to make you a little nervous, is that the females do not need a male to reproduce. They are self-cloning. The Gulf Coast tick, they are not too prominent in this area yet, although they have been found in Fairfax County. Long mouth parts, a scutum, you can see it's got some coloration and other lines. It also has the festoons. It's similar to the American dog, except for the mouth parts. And it carries a disease, or can carry a disease that's similar to Rocky Mountain spotted fever, although not as lethal. The last one I'm going to talk to you about is the deer tick. The black-legged tick, you can see it's more black-legged when you see it in the other set of photos, has the long, wide mouth parts. It does have a sputum, but it's mostly a reddish brown in its body. And notice, very distinctive feature, no festoons. It just has a smooth body on the bottom. So that's a very distinctive feature. They're the tiny ones, 2 to 3 milligrams as an adult. That is really, really small. These are the guys that can carry Lyme disease. Another feature I'm going to tell about the black-legged tick, it's in the genus Ixodes. And this is something you really need, not just a magnifying glass, but a microscope to see, but I'll share it anyway. The Ixodes ticks have, all ticks have some kind of anal groove. Ixodes ticks have an anal groove above the anus, and non-Ixodes have the groove below the anus. I did see this under a microscope, and yes, it's true. Let's talk a little bit about the life cycle of the tick. Similar to the mosquitoes, it starts as an egg mass, and then it moves to a larva stage. The difference is mosquitoes, the breeding is all underwater, where ticks, it's all on land, or it can be in your house, or they can even lay eggs on your pet. That's why you really want to check them out. But they primarily lay their eggs in vegetation. They like safe, warm, moist areas. That's the thing that ticks really like, is moist and warm. So they move to the larva stage. See the larva, they have the 6 legs. And then when they get a blood meal, they move to the nymph stage, and that's when they grow the extra pair of legs, and then finally to the adult stage. The ticks can overwinter in leaf litter as adults, and so they can come out, and some of them, again, can bite you in the winter. The deer tick and the longhorn tick can bother you in the winter as well. Oh, and here's another little distinction between mosquitoes and ticks. Remember, the mosquitoes can lay up to 300 eggs at a time. Ticks can lay from 3 to 7,000 at a time. Those are the ticks that are mostly in this area. Ticks in other parts of the world, some of them can lay up to 18,000 at a time. The female can produce 1 to 3 batches of eggs before she dies, and they can live as long as 3 years. It depends on when they can get their blood meal, and they can be very, very patient. Here's a nice little diagram of the black-legged tick life cycle, though it's very similar to a lot of others, but they've kept it as the black-legged tick. If you look at the egg mass in the middle, above the word spring, you can see how it starts. It goes to the larva stage in the summer, and generally will be biting rodents and birds and things like that, something that's close to the ground because they're little itty bitties. And then it can move all the way through the winter in to the next spring and become a nymph. Or it could do it sooner if it gets a blood meal before that. And look at how the kind of mammals that it will bite expands. So it can be raccoons or possums and foxes and deer, not just deer, it can be people too. A little known fact by a lot of people, possums can carry ticks. They also eat ticks. So I wonder, are they self-cleaning? Do they clean each other? I don't know, but it goes both ways. I mentioned this earlier, the risk of human infection is greatest in the late spring and summer, so you got to figure June, July, and August are the times when you might get a pathogen. Again, not all ticks carry pathogens. But if you keep following the circle, this particular tick can become an adult in the summer or fall, and then go all the way and produce eggs. And this is just a 2-year cycle, so they can go another year. Every life cycle needs a blood meal. This particular tick is a very slow feeder. It can take up to 3 to 5 days before it gets its fill. I want to tell you a little bit now too about how ticks attach. And this is something I hope you're going to be very aware of when you are out in your yard and taking walks and taking hikes, because I hope we can all get out there on the parks and enjoy them again. Ticks will climb up vegetation. They love grasses. And remember, they have 6 or 8 legs when they are looking to get a blood meal. So they can hang on to a piece of grass with 4 or 6 legs, and they can reach out in a process that's called questing. They are looking for an animal to attach to. And they are very quick movers. They are if you've ever seen a tick run, it is incredible how fast they are. They will attach, they will run on, attach is the wrong word, they will run and get on the host, and then they will look for a place to attach. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But they are very quick movers, and an important thing to remember, they don't have wings, so they don't fly, they don't jump, they don't fall from trees. They run, and they're very fast runners. So if people say there's a flying tick, somebody must have flung it because it doesn't have any wings to get to you that way. Okay, a little bit more about where they come up. We'll just talk about people because that's what we're most concerned about. Let's say a tick climbs up your pant leg, and they're going to look for a spot that's warm and moist. So it might be behind your knee if you're sweating, or they might climb higher. And I know this is not pleasant, but they might get in the area of where your pants, the top of your pants, or they might even crawl into your groin or belly button. This is very important that you check these areas because they are looking for a nice, safe spot to attach. If they get on your sleeve, they might climb up your neck, and you may not feel this, and get up into the area of your ears or climb into your hair. Now, people who get ticks in their hair is going, well, of course they must drop from a tree. No, their natural tendency is to climb upwards. So if they got up, they went up into your hair by climbing upward. Again, really, really important that you want to check yourself, check your kids, check your pets. And I'm going to talk more about this later. The tick life cycle. Oops, I already did that. How ticks feed and spread disease. It's through the process of feeding. They attach, and when they attach, they will pass on a pathogen that they're carrying that they picked up from a previous host. And it can take minutes or hours for them to attach. That's the reason that you want to check frequently to prevent attachment or get them as soon as possible after they attach. Ticks, not every tick carries a disease, so not every attachment means that they're going to transmit it. So what are you going to do? Okay, the first thing, avoid them. They're the most active now through September and into October. May, June, July, and August really are the times of most disease transmission. In your yard, you want to keep your grass and underbrush cut and thinned. If you have a brush, you want to keep it away from the areas where you're hanging out. If you're hiking, you want to walk in the center of the trail so you're not brushing against grasses and weeds and shrubs and dense vegetation, because that's where they hang out and wait to crawl onto people. Think about this also when you're walking through your neighborhoods at any time. You're walking on a sidewalk and there's shrubbery that's hanging over the sidewalk. Ticks can be in that too. So you know how to socially distance yourself from those shrubs because you don't want something to climb on you. And if you do accidentally brush against something, check yourself right away and look to see if something got on you. Again, a moving piece of pepper is not pepper. It might very well be a tick larva. If you're in areas of shrubbery and vegetation that's higher, tuck your pants and your socks so the ticks stay on the outside. You want to wear light-colored clothing, not because it repels ticks, because you can see them a lot better with light-colored clothing. This is really important if you go hiking. Check your kids, check your pets, check yourselves. And another thing, if you're not really sure if your clothes might have some ticks on them, put them in a hot dryer for 20 minutes, and that will kill ticks dead. It works every time. If you have clothing that can't stand a hot dryer, you can put it in a lower temperature from, for 40 minutes or so. If I've been walking around in the yard, I'll even throw my shoes in the dryer and just hope that it doesn't kick the door open. But, you want to kill these guys. Okay, what's the next step you want to do? You want to repel them. We talked about the repellents, which are effective on ticks too. DEET and picaridin are the best ones. Oil of eucalyptus and IR3535 are not as effective against ticks as repellents. We're talking trying to keep them away from you. You can also treat your clothes and shoes with permethrin. What? Permethrin? Didn't I say it was toxic? Yes. If you're spraying it in the air, yes, it can be very toxic. It can kill pollinators. You can treat your own clothing with permethrin. And a couple of slides later, I'll show you some examples of the products that you can use. Always, always, always follow label precautions. Or you can purchase pre-treated clothes, and I'll show you that too. As far as your pets are concerned, definitely ask your veterinarian for the products, collars or sprays that you can use on your pets. DEET advice. Toxicity is rare, but this is not something you want to spray heavily on yourself. You want to be sparing with it, just enough to coat it a little bit. Avoid higher concentrations. You're probably not going to find it above 30%, but if you do, don't use it on your skin. Never on babies, period. When I say don't apply on the palms of the hands, near eyes, mouth, cuts and wounds, you want to clean it off your hands as quickly as possible. Wash it off immediately after returning and wash it all off after returning indoors. But you also want to wash it off the palms of your hands. If you're out and about, if you can get alcohol wipes, which are easier to come by than straight alcohol these days, wash it off or wash your hands. Again, we're so conscious now about keeping our hands away from our eyes and mouth and cuts. This advice is probably not as important as it was pre-COVID-19. Okay, I want to switch back to camera because I want to show you some things, some items of clothing that I have right here. First of all, shirt. It's deadly. This can kill ticks. It's pre-treated. I bought it online, and it's not bad looking. You can actually wear it out and about. But it's very effective, and it's also very comfortable. And I can wash it 70 times before the permethrin treatment goes away. But I have more. You can buy pants. You probably can't run it up and down the screen here. Regular pants. Notice the pant leg, really cool because it has a little tighter cuff that you can fit around your leg, and you can pull these nifty socks over your pant legs. No, it doesn't look cool, but you don't want to be cool looking when you're protecting yourself from the ticks. I've got a hat. It's also great for the sun. It's got this little mesh thing in the middle. You probably can't see it. It's also, all these are 70 washes. They're very effective. And if you don't want to wear a hat, this is a really cool thing, a simple bandana. Here's one that I haven't used yet. It's got all the information. Insect Shield is one of the companies that is one of the big brands. And you can wrap it around your neck, and the ticks probably will not climb up your body, your head and your ears. This works very well. And if you want to keep your head they have I've got all the tags and everything. There's a lot of information that they'll give you with everything. Again, read all the labels. The stuff is very effective, and use it. Okay, let's get back to screen share. Whoops, what happened? Something happened here. Here we go. Okay, that was is the advice for that. Okay, a little bit more about if you want to treat your own clothing without buying pre-treated stuff. By the way, these clothes are not that expensive. I was surprised. It's really a pretty good value. And I also feel when your clothing is protected and your socks, when you're wearing protective clothing and socks, I really feel safe going hiking, because if they get on my shoes, they're going to die by the time they get to my socks. And if they land on my pants or on my shirt, they are going to die. And I've actually seen this in action. I have seen a tick when I was out hiking fall off dead. It's such a wonderful feeling. So, but anyway, if you want to treat your own clothing, again, there are lots of available options online. Sawyer is one of the best known, but obviously Repel is a good one too. For clothing and shoes only, do not put the stuff on your skin. You want the sprays to be dry for at least 2 hours before you put them on, because you don't want to have moist permethrin on your skin. And again, these kill rather than repel. They are deadly. These spray treatments don't last as long as the clothing does, but it does last at least a couple of weeks. And when I say poorly absorbed, rapidly inactivated, this is poorly absorbed on the skin, rapidly inactivated in the air. Read the instructions. Here's another tip, and I'm going to mention this again. If you have clothing that's treated, or you treat your own clothing, and you have a cat, do not let the cat sit in your lap or touch the clothing. Cats in particular are highly sensitive to permethrin. So this can really mess up your cat, leave them away. For that matter, don't let your dogs jump on you either.
Hey, Kasha,
Okay.
can you
Yes.
advance the slides? I think we're back to the first slide in the presentation. And
Oh no, oh golly, I'm sorry. Let me, let's see what happened here, because I'm in a different. Is this a different one?
yeah, I think we're good now. Landscape.
Okay, I'm gonna back up. I'm sorry, I was running through this one. I didn't realize I was sharing the wrong screen.
Okay, no problem. Thanks.
Let me back up. Uh-oh, it's not moving now. Okay, I think this is where I was telling you about the different products. The insect repellent, which is really permethrin, the sprays for your clothes if you want to treat your own clothes. And then I mentioned the thing about this doesn't last as long as if you get clothing that's already pre-treated. Okay, what do you do about your yard? Same thing. You don't want to be spraying permethrin in the air. And it's the same advice as for mosquitoes. What you want to do is you want to isolate brush, keep your grass low, provide air circulation if you can, if you do have a brush pile. Again, you want to keep down the humidity and keep down the heat. Clean up your leaves, and don't let the kids play in the leaves, or if they do, please check them over. before they come back in the house because they might have ticks on them. And the other thing is you can install a mulch barrier or even gravel. If you've got an area where you've got a lot of shrubbery and stuff, if there's an area next to the patio or your deck or something, you want to have a barrier and play area definitely between that and any shrubbery. Ticks don't like to cross things that are dry. And if you have dry mulch, gravel, hot, they don't like it. And think about this, if you're sitting on a patio or you're sitting on your deck, don't worry about you're going to be attacked by ticks, or if you have trees overhead, they don't fall out of trees. So you're safe in those areas, and you want to keep the play areas safe for your kids. And good luck on excluding wild animals. You're going to get mice and raccoons and a lot of other things in most of the yards, and some of us have deer issues too. Just be aware. I like this sign in the pesticide application, please keep off, and look at the picture they got. I believe the person in the middle is an adult. They have a dog and a child. Huh. Now, how long do you think it's safe before people can be on this property? If it's going to be killing, do you want your kids on there? I don't think so. I think that's a really good message. Just don't. So that's how you want to deal with your landscape. So you got a tick. Oh boy, what do you do? Well, before this talk, you would have panicked. Now you'll be calmly dealing with it. First of all, search head to toe, at least daily when you're in a vegetated area, and more often if you can. Ask someone to search your head and your back if possible. Otherwise, try to do the best that you can with mirrors. You found a tick. You want to get narrow tweezers. They work better than the wide ones, much better. You want to grab the mouth parts. So as close to the skin as possible, put down the tweezers and squeeze tight, fast and tight. And the reason you do that is you do not want them spitting anything back into your body. This is the stuff that might be bad. So you grab them and you pull straight up, not to the side, up. You want to get them out. What happens if you leave a little bit of the mouth parts in? Don't worry about it. What you're going to do afterwards is disinfect it. I'm going to tell you about that in the next slide. Try not to touch the tick with your bare hands. Don't use alcohol or fire on the tick on your body. Oh my God, when I was a kid, my mom used to burn ticks off of us. They would pop. Then, they got surprised. What do you think they did? They spit back inside of us. But we didn't worry about the pathogens so much. Anyway, that is the way you want to take a tick off your body. Then what? After you do that, you want to thoroughly clean the bite area. And I'm going to go back to the full screen again because I want to show you something. This is my handy dandy tick kit. It's in a baggie, a snack size baggie. Everything you need is in this little bitty bag. And this is great for hiking, but it's not a bad idea to keep this in your house too, because everything will be in one place and you know where to go. I keep inside of it a couple of little extra baggies if I want to have a tick ID'd. Right now, the Cooperative Extension Service, which does ID ticks, you can still get them ID'd, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult to do this. But if you want to carry a couple of extra baggies, and then if you can get alcohol swabs, they're easier to come by than the regular alcohol. And these are actually better because they're smaller. You can clean your wounds if you're out and about. And you can also wrap a tick in a swab if you want to keep it and have it identified. I have got also, I can get it out of here, nice tweezers. These are very narrow. You can see they're wonderful. You can really grab a tick and pull it out. You might also go to an outdoor store and get a little handy dandy thing like this. It's got the magnifying glass and the tweezers all in one. Pretty neat. If you don't have a small magnifying glass, some people can get a loupe. A loupe is a wonderful device that has different kinds of magnifying lenses. This is a good thing to keep in your tick kit or have handy. So you can look at it really carefully. And then of course, a ruler. So you can measure all this stuff. All this stuff I can fit in one little snack-sized baggie. And again, it's probably a good idea to keep this in your house too. It's, they're all handy. Okay, I am now going to try to screen share again. Hopefully this time, share the right screen. David, tell me if this is not then what.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Okay, good. Okay, so you're thoroughly cleaning the bite area either with soap and water or an iodine scrub or rubbing alcohol to make sure that you've got as much of the stuff out as possible. Then you either submerge the live tick in alcohol. We are not wasting our alcohol these days, so you probably don't want to do this, but you can wrap it in an alcohol swab if you've got one like I've showed you. If you want to have it identified, place it in a sealed bag. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that later. It's a little trickier while Virginia Cooperative Extension offices are closed. But you can also wrap it tightly in tape and throw it in the trash, or you can flush it down the toilet. You want to do that really quick because they're not good swimmers, but they're awfully good to they can get to the edge of the toilet and climb out really fast. So you want to do that quickly. Don't crush it with your fingers. Number 3 is the whole ID thing about taking it to a Virginia Cooperative Extension office. It's a little bit more difficult now, but you want to still, if you want to get it identified, you might be able to. It's going to be a little harder, but keep it in with rubbing alcohol. A swab is probably good enough. And the contact information, I'll tell you more about that later, but you want to keep in mind how long it attached as far as you know, and where you got it from, the location, that might help too. Now, if you develop a rash or fever or other unusual symptom within several weeks, you want to go to a doctor. And even during COVID, you want to get to a doctor because you might have picked up some disease. Tell the doctor what happened, and if possible, identify the tick so they'll know what kind of pathogen it might be carrying. Oops, how come we're not moving here? Uh-oh, I'm stuck. I don't know what's going on here. Okay, okay, here we go again. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of diseases in particular, but just general tick-borne disease information for now. It's the most common vector-borne illness in the US. Most people get that from tick bites and anything else. Not great news. Wherever ticks are found, where is that? Pretty much everywhere. The highest populations are in the Northeast, the Midwest, and the Pacific states, but as we well know, they are here too. So while there might be more there, we've got them and we need to know about them. Okay, here is a lot of information about diseases and the amount of attachment time to transmit it. You're not going to remember all of this, but this information is available on this PowerPoint, and I'm going to tell you where you can get this PowerPoint so you can have it, and also where you can run off a couple of nice, handy-dandy, short informational pages that will give you the most common diseases and what to look for when you might get them. But here are some of the things that you can get in the amount of attachment. That Powassan deer tick thing in 15 minutes, that's kind of scary. But again, not every tick is going to carry a pathogen. I'm going to talk about Lyme disease and Rocky Mountain spotted fever because those are the two biggest ones you might encounter, and they're, so you really need to know more about it. In most places, transmitted by ixodes. Remember ixodes with the anal groove? The deer ticks are probably the ones in this area. This is the classic bullseye rash. 70% of the people get this symptom. That means that 30% do not. So if you don't get the bullseye rash, you still might have Lyme disease. It takes quite a while for attachment, 24 to 48 hours. So this is, you've got some time with this one. But these are the symptoms that you might get. Flu-like symptoms, including stiffness in the neck joint, which seems pretty distinctive. And some people who are not treated can get really, really sick and have chronic problems for the rest of their life. Next page, I've got what this might look like on your body. But remember that 30% of the people who get Lyme disease do not develop the rash. Rocky Mountain spotted fever. This one is really bad. It can be deadly. It doesn't require a long period of time of attachment, only 4 to 6 hours. That's why you really, really want to check yourself often. It's transmitted by the American dog tick and the brown dog tick. Okay, day 2 to 12 after the bite, you get your first symptoms. The headache, the chills, the fever, the muscle aches, the nausea, and vomiting. Day 3 and later, you get the rash. The rash is very distinctive, and it can be deadly in 2 weeks. So you definitely want to pay attention to this one. This is what it can look like in the early stages of the rash, later stages. So it's a pretty distinctive rash. We're not doctors. Go to a doctor. Ask the doctor. I had what I thought could have been a Lyme disease rash. I was pretty sure it wasn't, but I went to the doctor and he pointed it out before even I did. So doctors, you might want to remind them about ticks, but doctors are pretty aware in this area about ticks. There also can be some very different symptoms. One of my relatives, a young boy, young teenager, his personality changed pretty much overnight. He went from being a really outgoing kid to something of a recluse, and his weight changed, and he just became more and more paranoid and had to stay at home. He couldn't even go to school. And he finally was tested, and it turned out he did have a tick bite, and that he got a pathogen, and they determined what the tick bite was, got him on the right antibiotics, and I'm happy to say he's a normal, happy, healthy kid. It really does make a difference, even if it's been a while. But if you go in to the doctor and you're feeling lousy and you test negative, and you go home and you still feel lousy, go back and get tested again. And if you still feel lousy, again, this can take weeks before it shows up as a positive test. Go again and get tested again. Make sure that it isn't a tick bite. And again, be aware of where you are, where you might pick it up. Pets. Pets can get Lyme disease and other diseases too. I really like this graphic because, oh my God, there's so much to check on this dog. There's so many places where a tick can attach, but it really identifies the hot spots. Eyelids, around the ears, between their toes, at their elbows, the groin area and under the tail, the neck, around a collar or any kind of clothing you might put on them. You really want to do a very detailed check through them, through their body. But definitely go to the veterinarian, get a collar or some kind of spray that they can use always go to a veterinarian first and use their advice. Don't do this stuff on your own. Please don't spray them with permethrin. And remember that ticks can live on pets and our bedding. So if they come in and you haven't checked them thoroughly, or even if you have, you might want to throw their bedding in the dryer for 20 minutes. That's the bedding, not the pet. But also look for it if they climb in bed with you. So another fun thing to think about when you're trying to sleep tonight. Again, remember, the cats and the permethrin thing, if you're wearing permethrin clothing, they're very sensitive to that, are really, really sensitive. Okay, summary, how to prevent ticks. Stay away from grasses, leaves, shrubs, wherever ticks might crawl up. Use repellent on yourself and wear appropriate clothing. Again, I can't say enough about the pre-treated clothes, because I think, and if you spray them yourself, because they are tick killers, not just repellents, but repellents work too. Check for and remove the ticks and use a hot dryer on clothes. If you are out hiking, check yourself as well as you can before you get in the car. And hopefully the ticks will be on the outside of your clothes at this point, or roll up your pant legs and sleeves a little bit, look around your neck without having to strip completely. Last spring, we went hiking with a friend of mine, and she brought some ticks into the car. Luckily, the car got very hot sitting in the sun, so I wasn't worried about the ticks, but it was a little bit uncomfortable ride for a while. Pets. Appropriate repellents, talk to your veterinarians, check them well, check their bedding, the yard, remove, isolate, brush, clean up leaf litter, install the barriers between the areas where you are active, play areas especially, and as much as you can, discourage wildlife that can carry ticks, but I know it's really hard with mice and raccoons and squirrels and everything else that they can get on. Here are some resources. The best one is the CDC. They have got a lot of information, not just about West Nile, but about ticks and mosquitoes in general, a lot of identification information. Virginia Department of Health, again, Maryland, DC, Delaware, they're all gonna have a good site for information about mosquito and ticks. And here are Alexandria and Arlington as well, and VDAX. Okay, this slide is, I got a lot of information on here, but I just changed it last night because I figured I should update it for COVID. Oh, it's not COVID-10, that's wrong. Sorry, it's COVID-19. I gotta change that, I'll have to fix that. The center is now closed, but they are still answering emails, and that is the best way if you want to have a tick identified. Take the best photo that you can, the best close-up that you can get, and attach it to an email. And this is going to the Master Gardeners of Arlington and Alexandria. This is the Master Gardener group that's going to be answering that. And if you have a tick question or a mosquito question, they can help you with that. If you have a dead tick, you can mail it to the Kirsten Conrad, who is responsible for the first development of this talk. And she is also the agent, the Virginia Cooperative Extension agent for Arlington. You can mail it to her at the address and allow at least 10 days for her to respond, because she's got to go and pick it up and then have it identified the best she can. It's tough to do without a microscope, but she'll do the best she can, and they really do give good advice. I told you before that you can get a copy of this presentation at armin.org, and that's the Arlington Regional Master Naturalist.org, under resources, mosquitoes and ticks, and I will change COVID-10 to COVID-19 today. So that's pretty much it for the talk. If you've got any questions, please let me know if you got anything else.
Yeah, Kasha, I think we just, again, you're so comprehensive. I think you covered a lot of things. Just give you two questions. I think we can pretty close it off after that. So first of all, if you mentioned tick names like dog tick and deer tick, does that imply that that's their primary host? And then the other question, you said check yourself every 4 hours. Does that mean we have that long before they find a place? And does it make sense to shower after you get back from a nature hike?
Right. And I'm sorry I went over a little bit. I'll blame it on David for taking up my time early on.
Sure.
But I hope you all stayed, and I hope you got something out of it.
Oh, did you want to respond to those two questions?
I thought. Oh, wait, could you run them by again?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So when you mentioned a dog and deer tick, does that imply that that's their primary host? And then the other ones you said, check yourself.
No. The American dog tick, that's just the name of the tick. No. It has nothing to do with the host. The deer tick, yes, it is one of the carriers of that particular tick, but it can also be on any kind of little animal. It can be on a mouse or a raccoon or a squirrel or a bird. So they can attach to anything. I think they were primarily found on deer early on. That's how they got the name. But the dog tick, they're not the carriers of it. No, I'm sorry. What was the other one?
And then you mentioned check yourself every 4 hours. Does that mean we have that long before they find a place? And does it make sense to shower after you do a nature hike?
Those are great questions. It might be. I'd say the chances of them attaching within the 4 hour period, although some of the ticks can attach quicker, your chances of getting a pathogen are so much less if you can do it that often. And when you come in from a hike, do it right away before you get in the car, the initial check. And I'm glad you mentioned the thing about showering, because I also want to talk about laundering your clothes. A shower is always a great idea. They might fall off if they haven't attached, but hot water does not kill a tick. It's the hot, dry heat will kill a tick, or the permethrin if you're wearing the clothing. So yes, a shower is a good idea, but you might want to check before the shower and after the shower too, because it's hot water is not going to make a difference. Same thing with laundry. You can put them through hot laundry, and the tick can still be attached to clothing. It's the dry heat. The dry heat will get them every time, but not necessarily in your washing machine.
Okay, great presentation, Kasha. And anyone, if you want to give a hand clap, a virtual hand clap or thumbs up, there's a reaction icon down at probably the bottom of your screen. Go ahead and do that. And I'm waiting for your next version of covering fleas, chiggers, and no-see-ums. I don't know. Just kidding, but we just covered 2 bugs. It's amazing. We hope to put the full presentation up on the Encore Learning website. We're going to work with that, but because there's so much information, you may want to actually run through parts of it again. And I think we've got most of the questions covered there. And there's a couple of very specific ones that we'll try to do a written Q&A and again, post that on the Encore website. But thanks everyone for joining us. Remember, in 2 weeks, we'll do this again. And everyone be safe and stay healthy. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.